everyone, and welcome to this Neutral Zone special presented by Q30 Sports. My name is MJ Baird. Alongside me today is men's ice hockey beat reporter Kyle Lavasser. And Kyle, hockey season starts on Friday. Are you ready?
Best time of the year. Always ready, MJ.
Quinnipiac taking on Boston College at Conte Forum on Friday at 7 p.m. So, Kyle, let's jump right to it. We'll start with what I like to call the first period, the A block of our show. Let's start with the media poll for the ECAC this year. Quinnipiac comes in at number 2. Harvard, of course, the defending ECAC champion, at number 1. 3 through 5, you got Cornell, Princeton, Clarkson, and then there's a bit of a jumble there in the middle, and down towards the bottom you have RPI, Brown, and Colgate. But what are your reactions to this poll, Kyle?
Yeah, I think Quinnipiac, it's a fair ranking putting them at 2. My top 3 are the same. I just have Quinnipiac at number 3 and then Cornell at 2. I think Harvard is the clear team to beat in the ECAC. They return a lot, especially Ryan Donato, Ted Donato's son. And then you have Mitch Gillum in net, Merrick Madsen in net.
Sure.
He's going to be tough to beat, both of which are preseason all ECAC players. It's just a really, really strong team, Harvard. They always bring out a solid team. And when you win the ECAC from a year ago, I think you just got to respect them a little bit.
My thing, I don't have a problem with Harvard at 1. I like where Quinnipiac slotted at 2. In my personal poll, I did have Princeton up at 3 and Cornell at 4. So jumbled a little bit for me, but I do see teams 3 through 7 really could fall anywhere. And I don't want to sleep on Yale this year. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like Yale a lot. They got Joe Snively. I think he's going to be one of the better forwards in the ECAC. He's an all ECAC prediction for me. I like Yale a lot, and I think there's a lot of teams that were at the top of the conference last year, teams like Union, teams like St. Lawrence that lost a lot in the offseason, that I think Yale is going to bump up. They've been rebuilding the last couple years. I think now they've got the goaltending in place after losing Alex Lyon. They now have Sam Tucker, who's a solid goaltender, and Joe Snively, I think, is a player to really watch out for.
Head coach Keith Elaine, too, will be assisting with Team USA in the Olympics, so that's also something to watch out for in terms of Yale. But, Kyle, let's jump now straight to Quinnipiac. We talked about this last year. They had Quinnipiac goaltenders. They had a platoon, Chris Truhl and Andrew Shortridge. This year, Shortridge is back, Truhl is not, but now they bring in freshman Keith Petruzzelli. What do you think of this goaltending situation?
Yeah, it's an interesting situation, MJ, and one I think we're going to be talking about throughout the entire year. With what happened with the last 2 national championships, you go right from Eric Hartzell to Michael Gartig, and it's a perfect situation. It's almost a comparison to Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers with the Green Bay Packers. It's a little tougher now around because I think it's Andrew Shortridge's job to lose after the way that he played at the end of last year, winning a playoff series on the road at St. Lawrence, down a game. He goes and beats Kyle Hayden, one of the nation's best goaltenders, and then he won the Yale game at home. He showed that he can win games under pressure. He was the ECAC February goalie of the month. He was excellent. But now you have this kid, Keith Petruzzelli, who's drafted in the 3rd round by the Detroit Red Wings, and he had offers from all over the place.
He's a real deal.
He is the real deal, and he showed that in the exhibition game. But if he doesn't play, I think what Pecknold might be risking is that Petruzzelli might just leave after this year because Shortridge is only a year above him. If he wins a starting goalie job, Petruzzelli might look to go, hey, maybe I'd go to the Red Wings. Maybe I'd try and find a different school because I don't want to spend the next 3 years sitting. I mean, it's a tough situation.
I mean, he's not going to go to the Red Wings without having played somewhere. I do think he can find that spot here at Quinnipiac, but looking ahead to this weekend, Quinnipiac has BC Friday, BU Sunday. So if you were Pecknold, who would you play and when?
I would give Keith Petruzzelli the start against BC. I think on the road where he's from, Massachusetts, I think that's a good spot for him. And then you come home and you play Shortridge against BU. BU is the tougher team. And I think starting Petruzzelli on Friday night, it kind of will light something under Shortridge. We saw Shortridge really throughout the entire year as Truhl started to play more. Shortridge really jumped on the opportunities that he had that he could start. So I think if you start Petruzzelli, it'll start a little, friendly competition between the two, and that's what I would do personally.
So my take on this is the following. When I talked to Jared Wayman, the Quinnipiac goalie coach, this past Monday at Media Day, he brought up a good point. He said, if you remember correctly, last year in the scrimmage game, or the exhibition, if you will, against McGill, Andrew Shortridge got the start. And then at the beginning of the year, Quinnipiac kind of leaned towards Chris Truel. So in that exhibition, they were giving Shortridge a chance to go through the pregame routine and start the game. I'm wondering if the coaching staff's decision this year is the same. Give Petrozelli that chance, because when you have to come in like at the second period or third period of a game and you're kind of cold, it's not the same production you're going to get.
Well, let's look at right here, Andrew Shortridge from last year. He does a great job controlling the rebounds. I think this is really going to be his sweet spot. Here on the penalty kill, he does a great job controlling the rebound. And here, even in the against Brown in last year's playoffs, he does an excellent job corralling that rebound. And then he can even make some grade A saves. Like you said, we talked to Jared Wayman at Media Day, and he thought that Shortridge did make some really nice saves against St. Mary's. You see another one there against Brown. But what Rand Pecknold really looks for in his goaltenders is what they can do on the penalty kill.
Sure.
And I think that was
and the
really
power play too, like moving the puck.
Absolutely. And that was really what made the difference between Truel and Shortridge last year. Truel did tend to give up too many rebounds, which he let in. And then on the penalty kill, Shortridge was just clearly better.
So I'm interested to see who is going to take that starting position Friday night. If I were Pecknold, I'm going to agree with you. I would take Petrozelli and put him in, because you got BU coming to town on Sunday. I think you're going to want your veteran, if you will.
I think you want the experience. And even though he is only a sophomore, he has the playoff experience. He's only the fourth Quinnipiac freshman goalie to ever start in a playoff game, and the first one to even win. So I think you go with the experience.
However, what I was going to continue to say, what I think is going to happen is I do think Shortridge is going to play on Friday night. I think the start for Petrozelli in the exhibition was just a chance to give him a chance to go through that pregame routine and start the beginning of the game. So we'll see what happens there. Moving on now, Kyle, though, the talk last year and this year with this Quinnipiac team was who's going to be the go-to goal scorer. So if I had to ask you, you're down one, less than 5 minutes to go in the third period, maybe you're pulling the goalie for the extra attacker. Whose shot are you trying to set up?
To me, I go to Nick Germain. And you see he only had 4 goals in his freshman campaign last year. But, you know, you look at a lot of players that last year really grew as forwards. I look at a Craig Martin, who after his freshman year only had 1 goal. And then he added 11 more goals in his sophomore year. I think, and, you know, Pecknold was saying in his freshman year, for Martin, there were just too many good players.
Yeah.
And he needed a little more time to develop. I think Germain, it's going to be the same type of thing. He had a few beautiful goals. That one against Brown in the playoffs was absolutely beautiful. He had the shootout game winner against Vermont in the Friendship 4 last year in Ireland. He's got some skills, and I think another year of getting bigger in the offseason is going to really help him.
He certainly has the talent. There is absolutely no arguing that. But the person I'm going to go to is someone who stuck out to me in the exhibition game against St. Mary's, and that's Alex Whalen, the sophomore. He saw a significant, and I mean significant amount of time last year. As you can see, 36 games played. He only had 10 points, but we talked about this at the end of last year. He hit his stride in the ECAC playoffs, 6 points there. I really liked the way he looked against St. Mary's. He, was not afraid to go to the net and put shots on net. The kid has a rocket of a shot. There's no arguing that. And what I saw, he had a lot of confidence. He wasn't afraid to play, get his nose dirty in the corner, but also just fire from anywhere on the ice. And when you shoot from anywhere, at some point, those pucks are going to go in. All right, Kyle, so that's the first period for you. Make sure you stick around for our second period. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back.
Bobcat Breakdown presented by the Quinnipiac Bobcat Sports Network.
We are your source for debate.
Did they make the playoffs last year, Tom Jenkins?
When it clicks, it clicks.
We dissect Quinnipiac athletics on a scale you've never seen before.
With Tobia, it almost looks like she's reaching a little bit.
Plus, we bring in the biggest names surrounding college sports.
We are live here at the Times Union Center with Jay Billis.
And of course, some comedy.
But you can only have so much arena food.
I think you're crazy. Bobcat Breakdown.
Tuesdays at 9:30.
We're now here for our second period of action, Kyle. You talked on the phone earlier today with one of BC's newspaper editors, so you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Michael Sullivan, the editor-in-chief of the BC Heights. He's been covering Hockey East for a while, so let's take a listen.
Boston College men's hockey is definitely taking a hit from last season in terms of its senior production. A lot of its leading scorers from last year, including seniors Austin Cangelosi and Ryan Fitzgerald and Matthew Gaudreau, as well as sophomore Colin White, have moved on to greener pastures. It's been a theme recently with BC and losing a lot of high-quality talent all at once. So this year, I think one of the biggest struggles for BC in its quest to return to the NCAA tournament will be that offensive firepower. It's going to have to come in a lot of different places, especially in areas in which the Eagles haven't previously sought out. David Cotton, who broke out last year for this Eagles offense, will have to be one of the leading scorers, without a doubt, along with team captain center Christopher Brown. He's moving from the wing to center this year, mostly out of necessity, and J.D. Dudek. That trio, including the two juniors and the sophomore Cotton, will likely be where the scoring offense comes from BC. They're pretty high on freshman Jacob Tora and Casey Carew. They expect a lot out of those two guys, as well as freshman Logan Hutsko. I would expect those two to have to really step up offensively. And Apelli Raceman and the other Finnish player, Julius Matila, on the forward side. That's where a lot of the production is going to have to come. But it's going to be a scrappy team offensively. That's what they're struggling on. Defensively, whereas last year was a little bit more of a struggle, this year should be more of a focus for this team. They have Joseph Wall, who is arguably one of the best goaltenders in the nation. He's the backup goaltender for the Team USA in last year's IHF World Championship. And Wall should, the third draft pick of the Toronto Maple Leafs, should be strong still. They're probably the best two players on this team are defenseman Kate Fitzgerald and Michael Kim, the two team captains. Fitzgerald, a draft pick of the Buffalo Sabres. Those two are really offensive-minded defensive, but still willing to be bruisers. But one thing that Coach York has done this year that he hasn't really had in years past, he's got those big bodies coming in on defensively. He's got Michael Carew, who is a freshman. He's 6'2", 200 pounds, and he's expected to be that more, strong, defensively minded enforcer type. And then they brought in a graduate transfer, Kevin Lohan, who was an assistant captain last year at Michigan. He's 6'5", is one of the biggest players. He's the biggest skater on the team. So defensively and in goal, this team will have a lot of success. It probably won't give up a ton of goals, but it probably won't score as many either.
Right, so like you just heard, MJ, Joseph Wool, he says, will be one of the nation's best goaltenders. He has a great article that you can check out on BC Heights' website. And it's an interesting matchup because the last time the two teams saw each other was in the Frozen Four. Yeah,
this is definitely something that I think is going to be, I guess I'd call it a good test for Quinnipiac to see kind of like a benchmark where they are. Granted, it's early in the season, and we talked to Rand Pecknold at Media Day on Monday as well, and he said, in his opinion, his team hits their stride come the middle of November or so, maybe just before Thanksgiving. So I asked him, would you rather play these Hockey East opponents now or later? And he didn't really give a clear answer, but it seemed to indicate it's a good way to shape up for the season, see what you have. But in other words, these games matter for the USCHO.com poll, for the NCAA tournament ultimately. So you need to get wins early in the year. And BC on the road is not going to be easy. BU at home, maybe even harder.
Well, they absolutely count towards the pairwise rankings. But for me, it's even more about seeing if the players are buying into the system, because Rand Pecknold is all about whether his players are buying into their system and playing to Quinnipiac's identity. And we saw that 2 years ago when Quinnipiac swept St. Cloud State in a series. Yeah. St. Cloud State was #2 in the country at that time. Yeah. And that was a huge momentum builder going into the conference play. I think this is a big weekend of finding out who the team really is, finding out who the starting goalie will be, finding out who the breakout players on offense will be. It was a much different Quinnipiac team than I saw at the exhibition than the last couple of years. They struggled on the faceoffs. Rand Pecknold said it was the worst faceoff game he's seen in the last 15 years. And the faceoffs have really been the bread and butter for this Quinnipiac offense. They've given them a lot of puck possession time, allow them to draw plays together on offense. And when you're not doing that and you don't have those natural goal scorers that maybe we've seen with Sam Annis in the past, they're going to struggle on offense. So you got to figure out the face-offs, you got to try and find a good goal scorer, and then the goalie situation this weekend.
So just a quick preview for you, Kyle. Quinnipiac returns all three of their top point getters from last year: Craig Martin, Landon Smith, and Chase Prisky. As you can see on your screen here, juniors for Martin and Prisky. Prisky, of course, also wearing the C this year, and Landon Smith as a senior. So you got to look at these two forwards and Prisky, of course, on the blue line as go-to players. Do you agree?
Absolutely. And Chase Prisky on the power play especially. He had a great job last year taking over from how much they lost in the power play with Travis St. Dennis and Sam Annis leaving a couple years ago. And now you're losing Tim Clifton on the power play, who was tops in the country with power play goals. So really look for Chase Prisky to step up on the power play. He's great at facilitating. He is a great playmaker and will rack up the assists. And Landon Smith is no slouch either. 29 points last year. He'll be a great goal scorer. And then, like I was talking about Craig Martin earlier, going from 1 goal to 11 goals, I want to see if it continues to increase.
Yeah, certainly. And I think Rand Pechtold wants to see that number increase too.
Absolutely, wouldn't hurt.
And, of course, on the other hand, we'll look at the top returners from Boston College. They didn't return any of their top 5 point getters from last year, but look at these 3 juniors right here. J.D. Dudek, Christopher Brown, and Casey Fitzgerald, 2 forwards, and then Fitzgerald, of course, on the back line. So 22 points, 26 points, 22 points respectively. Certainly no slouches on BC either.
Yeah, and Casey Fitzgerald is the player to watch for BC. Michael Sullivan said he sees him as the best player on Boston College's team. But when you lose your top 5 point scorers, it definitely hurts. Luckily for them, they have Jerry York, who has been there and done that. I think they'll end up being just fine.
All right, we're going to take another quick break, but when we come back, it's our 3rd period, and we'll bring in our out-of-conference specialist, Kirby Paulson, to talk about the BU game on Sunday.
This is Sports Pause.
Are you concerned with the 0-2 start for this team?
Right here, top of the circle. Again, rips it past the Jasper's goalie.
What will breaking the record mean for the program himself? I mean, 138 wins.
There's the tough shot. What a nice play by Mikey Dixon.
He's good in transition. Just a really dynamic scorer he can create for himself.
And now, Emma, it's time for the top 5 plays of the week.
Welcome back here on our Neutral Zone special preview edition. Kyle, it's time for the 3rd period. Ring the buzzer. The game's almost over. We're going to welcome in now Kirby Paulson. We're going to treat him today as our out-of-conference specialist. So, Kirby, how you doing today?
MJ, Kyle, how we doing, boys? Good to be back.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us today. We'll start with our first question. To you, what does Boston University bring to the table?
I mean, I think the better question is, what do they not bring to the table? We're talking about a team that are offensive catalysts. They have a really strong defense. MJ, I know you and I were looking at the line shots from a couple of days ago. Almost every single one of those guys is drafted by an NHL team. It looked like all 7 had a nice little logo next to their name there. And they also have an outstanding goaltender in Jake Ottinger. And, of course, David Quinn is one of the finest college hockey coaches in the entire country. So they're going to come in firing, and I think it's going to be a really good test for this Quinnipiac team to go up against the Terriers on Sunday.
Yeah, Kirby, we just spent the last 2 blocks talking about all the changes Quinnipiac is making this year. But what do you think Quinnipiac will struggle with the most against BU?
Oh, man. I mean, the 3 of us were at the game last year up at Agganis Arena. I think in terms of struggling, they're going to have to stay out of the box, especially against a BU team like this one. They're going to go in. Both of these teams love to grind, but they have to stay out of the box and really take advantage of their power play opportunities, too. I think that one game where Boston University beat Quinnipiac 3-0. There were 16 power play minutes that Quinnipiac could have converted on, and nothing came out of it. So you have to be able to score in that section as well. But they really need to score early and establish it as well. You can't just bank on the fact that you're going to score late. I love it. I love the adversity story. I like the idea that they're able to come in at the last second and try to get some points on the board. But you really want to try to establish it as early as you can.
Kirby, every year there's a conversation. Is it Hockey East the better conference? Is it ECAC? Is it something else? But we'll pull up the Hockey East coaches poll for you, and we just want to hear your opinion. What do you think about this poll?
Yeah, I mean, we looked at the coaches poll earlier, and I've been looking at it for a while now. I think it's pretty close to what I expected. I think Boston University and UMass Lowell, the 2 of them, are neck and neck in terms of teams to beat in the conference this year. But I don't think you can count teams like Providence out. I know they're number 3, not that far behind at all. Nate Lehman is one of the best coaches in Hockey East, the country, college hockey. Nate Lehman, Norm Bazin, guys like that. Norm Bazin, obviously the head coach of UMass Lowell. Both of them could have been considered for NHL coaching jobs as well, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them eventually go pro if they ever want to leave that stature. So we'll see how teams like Boston College and Northeastern kind of fit into the bottom of the pack there, and then, of course, it's Vermont and UNH coming up right behind them. So we'll see how that kind of plays out, but I don't think you can count those middle-of-the-range teams out, because I think in the end, when it comes down to Hockey East hockey with the quality of play, it's really anyone's game at the end.
So, Kirby, Quinnipiac has BU on Sunday right here, 2 p.m. I got to ask you, what are your predictions for this game?
I think it's actually going to be a close one. I think even though BU has as much talent as they do, I think they're one of the most talented teams in the country. This is going to be a really good test for Quinnipiac. I'm interested to see how the goaltender matchup lines out. I think it's going to be close, but I think BU takes this one 3-1.
Kirby, thank you so much for joining us here on our Neutral Zone special, and we'll see you this weekend up at the rink.
Thanks, boys.
So, Kyle, I got to ask you real quick. ECAC, Hockey East, something else?
I got to go with something else, actually, MJ,
Really?
and I'm going with the NCHC out west. I mean, they got a lot of talent out there. They got
Certainly.
the reigning national champs in Denver. They're returning basically everyone. They had 48 of the 50 first-place votes in the first USCHO poll. The polls are really high on St. Cloud State, also, who I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Even though they went under 500 last year, they're 9th in the polls to start the year. There's also North Dakota, Minnesota, Duluth out there. I mean, it's really solid. I think Denver's the team to beat in college hockey right now. But Hockey East is really strong with BU, UMass Lowell, even Northeastern. They've got a lot of talent in their first few lines. It's just fun. I'm just excited to be back, MJ. Get ready for college hockey.
It's going to be a great year of college hockey. Starts now. What are we, October 4th? And, well, we're going into April probably.
Lasts forever.
So long season ahead of us, but we're ready for it. That's all we have here on our Neutral Zone special. Thank you so much for joining us. For all our content, you can check out our website at Q30TV.com. Kyle and I as well are both traveling to Boston College on Friday for Quinnipiac's game up at Conte Forum. So you can check us out on social media too at Q30 Sports.